Hey there, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Michael Cross, and I'm an instructor of psychology, international relations, and international finance. And, well, I would encourage you, if you enjoy those kinds of topics, as well as things dealing with how psychology is used to manipulate you in marketing and politics, and also a lot of stuff on psychopathy, narcissism, and so forth, then please subscribe to my channel. It's really easy. Just go down there, click subscribe, and also click on the bell, because then you'll receive notices when new videos are put up. If you don't click the bell, then not everyone in the subscription list gets the notifications. So anyway, I was going to just give a brief discussion of evolutionary psychology. And a lot of people have heard the term, but they don't really know what it means. And essentially, and not to put people off, I just want to say I would probably say most evolutionary psychologists are strong adherents to evolution in the traditional Darwinian sense. Although there are many people who are religious, of all different types of religious persuasions, who feel that the aspects of evolutionary psychology as they relate to human behavior, they have their origins maybe in a more creative sense, if you know what I mean. That our traits that help us to survive and reproduce and so forth are set up on a pattern by an intelligent designer. But regardless of how you feel about that, let me explain what it really means. Now, the basic premise of Charles Darwin's work, Origin of the Species and Descent of Man, is essentially that traits that enable an organism to survive will, and then, of course, reproduce, are desirable traits. If an organism just survives but it doesn't reproduce, then of course that would not be a desirable trait because it wouldn't be passed on. And adaptation is very important in this as well. So sometimes it's not necessarily the strongest, the fittest, or whatever that actually survive to reproduce. It's those that can adapt to their environment. But beyond that, the idea that Darwin proposed in his theories of sexual selection is that there are certain traits that will attract mates. And you can see that just as an example with large herd animals like rams or elk. The strong male takes over and may have a harem of 20 or 30 females in which he reproduces with. Peacocks, the one that has the biggest feathers, and it may be even a disadvantage when it comes to survival because they can't run away from predators as easily. But that peacock with the largest feathers will be the one that attracts females and, of course, will father the next generation through a variety of females. Now, it's easy for people sometimes to think, well, that's fine for animals, but how does that relate to humans? Well, evolutionary psychology would say that the traits that have enabled your ancestors to pass on their genes are what has actually been a favorable characteristic in the species. And those who had traits that were not so favorable, well, they aren't your ancestors. They never reproduced. And the ironic thing is I've read that less than 50% of males in history ever had children, whereas over 80% of females did. So this shows that maybe the sexual selection process within humans has been important, and it's not just an animal thing. Now, what are some traits that you might think of when it comes to this evolutionary psychology? Well, you could say that traits such as, especially with males, because I actually do believe that females are the ones who determine, the mating process. Uh, yes, males are out there trying to get dates and, in a kind of hedonistic sense, spread their seed. But it's the women that determine who spreads the seeds. And often you could say certain traits such as high intelligence, which also I would associate with cleverness, strength, the ability to be strong and protect, as well as the wealth. Now, why are these things so important, and a combination of those things even better? Well, the thing is that in human beings, as well as many other species, females, when they do get pregnant, it takes them 9 months to have a baby. During much of that time, they're not capable, in a traditional sense. I'm talking about the laws of the jungle, okay? I'm not talking about the laws of the workplace. But the laws of the jungle, which people have lived for countless generations, would say that, well, she can't take care of herself when she's 4, 5, 6 more months pregnant. She can't go out there and obviously fish and hunt and gather yams or something like that very easily. And after she's had the baby, she has to take care of the baby for a year or more, where the baby is pretty much helpless. And so therefore, what has led to is a desire to have a male to be there, a husband. And those people who had this idea of, well, let's form a union and then stick together, they had more children, and more children that survived. And therefore, you could say, irrespective of religion or whatever, you could say that that trait of mating and sticking together has an evolutionary advantage. That, therefore, is a type of evolutionary psychology. And the thing is, if the person was strong, well, that's a good trait. Maybe they were very good hunters and so forth. They were very good going out and chopping trees down and plowing a field as well. If the person was in a more advanced society, they would be able to use their money to pay someone else to do all those things, to guard the house, to chop the trees down, to till the land, and so forth. And the same would be true for people who had higher intelligence. They would be able to attract mates and be able to use their skills to make money and to have a profession and so forth. Now, it doesn't mean that a person that was big and strong wasn't maybe as bright as someone else, but it does say that there are those 3 main areas that women would find to be more attractive. And so therefore, where does that come from? It comes from, at least in evolutionary psychology, the idea that those are things that could help you survive and could make the difference between not surviving and not passing your genes on, or having a big family and being the one who does carry things on. Now, the irony is, you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, if less than half of men reproduced and more than 80% of women reproduced, what was going on there? Was there a lot of cheating or something? Not necessarily. You can see that in today's society, where sometimes you will have a more, let's just say, a more attractive or wealthier or whatever, any of those traits, type of guy. And if there is some sort of, maybe marries young, has kids, something happens to his wife. Well, he has a much greater chance of remarriage and creating another family than someone who doesn't have those kinds of traits. And that's in a monogamous society. Now, if you look back in history, most societies were polygamist. So if a male had traits that were desirable, that and there was no limit on how many wives he could have, then therefore his traits passed on into more children. Whereas maybe there was other guys who, well, they didn't pass on their genes at all. So that is what evolutionary psychology is about. And it would say that subconsciously, and this is where it kind of gets into the Freud stuff, but subconsciously, people still think in those ways that help them to survive in the jungle or on the savannah or in the tundra or whatever for countless generations. Okay? Our basic psychology hasn't changed. It's been molded by what worked in the past. And so therefore, people will still look for these kinds of traits. And they may not even, you may have a guy who doesn't even want to have kids. He doesn't want to ever have children or whatever. In fact, maybe even when he's young, he gets a vasectomy, so he can't have kids. That doesn't mean he's still not attracted to the women who, because of hormones and so forth, their body shape and other secondary sexual characteristics will imply that they're more fertile. Okay? And the same would be true for a woman. So even though someone may think to themselves, because of modern society, well, I'm not going to have a child or anything like that, they're still governed by those same things. So what we see what a man sees in a woman or a woman sees in a man are traits that will, are part of the survival process. All right? And that would differ from other types of psychology where, for instance, Freud might say that a man likes a woman with large breasts because it reminds him of when he was little and his mother was holding him and comforting him when he was a baby, versus evolutionary psychology, which would say, well, it may imply that this woman is more fertile and will make more children for you and will nurture them. Okay? So there's where there's some overlap, but there's also some differences as well. Evolutionary psychology is more of a idea that the science of reproduction is involved in all the sciences as well as even the social sciences. So therefore, that gives you kind of a primer on what it is, and the idea would be that who we are and what our preferences are, even our preferences for junk food, which always are very dense in calories and are easy to digest and assimilate. Well, we think in our minds, well, that's not good. I'm going to get overweight if I eat lots of this. But in a natural setting, you do eat what will give you more calories, so when there's no food available, you can survive on the stuff that you've stored away. So, we still get the cravings for eating this kind of lousy food for our waistlines, because we're still programmed by that law of the jungle, which says, hey, it's available, eat it. It's good. It tastes good. And that's why people prefer junk food over a stalk of celery or something like that. So that's a kind of an easier way to maybe understand what evolutionary psychology is about, and gives you an idea basically when someone brings this up, especially in debates on, are we a product of our environment or are we a product of our biology? Gives you an idea of what is being the foundation of those arguments. Anyway, well, take care. I hope you subscribe, and I'll catch you later.